And one thing I actually wanted to add before wrapping up this lesson is to kind of summarize this idea of continuity and compressing time. So let's take a look at continuity. This idea of continuity ensures that your video has matching position of objects in your frame, space, aka where you're shooting, and time, aka the flow of normal time. So, in most videos, the goal is to create a smooth flow of space or location, even when parts of your film are not necessarily even shot in order or at the same time. So, what we're going to talk about is can be a little bit tricky. Now, if we break continuity or compress time on a dialogue scene, and characters in your video start skipping forward in the words that they're saying instead of saying the whole sentence from front to back, they say the first word and you edit to the last word, that's not going to make sense. That's not a proper break in continuity, and that's not a proper way to compress time in your edit. In that scenario, this exact principle would actually be distracting and bring down the quality of your video. But in other scenarios, we can use this technique to skip forward in time and purposefully break continuity to create an effect. So if we just look at the first few shots of the montage we just created, this is the perfect example of a scenario where it makes sense to break continuity. There's information that simply doesn't need to be shown here. That's why we skip ahead. So, one of the beauties of film is that 24 hours in the film or video world doesn't have to equal 24 hours in real life. So, if we take the same exact shot without any breaks in continuity, without any compressing in time, and just play it as it was in real life, let's see what the clip looks like. Okay, not a whole lot to talk about there, right? But I think it's pretty clear. Your goal is to find those moments where you can bend the rules and use your blade tool, use your edits to enhance your footage and create something that wasn't there originally. Now, the techniques aren't going to be one size fits all for every single video. It's about your discernment that you're starting to really cultivate from this course, and that's how you're going to be able to make the right decisions in all of your future edits. So, as I've been going through and continuing to pull selects, I got to a place in the timeline where I did a really long recording of one tripod shot. Now, you can see here this spanned the length of four separate MOV files. Now, this is a perfect time to dive back into another use for creating a nested sequence. So first off, what I'm going to do here is create some space in our edit. I'm going to duplicate these clips because there are some shots in here that I want to just pull out and have on their own. Now, the next step is going to be we're going to create a time lapse out of these clips. And the trick is going to be because we're working with multiple clips this time for the time lapse, instead of one recording, we're going to nest these four clips together. So I'm going to select the clips, right click, hit nest, hit OK. And now I can go and right click and adjust the speed of all four clips as one main clip. Otherwise, the process would be selecting all the clips. You would have to go in, change the speed, move things around. I already know that I want to treat these as one long time lapse. So the nesting, what it simply does is allow for me to globally treat the clip as one, and I can go into the duration and go from a 29-minute clip to, let's say, a 10-second clip, hit OK. Now that's going to speed up and create that time lapse we're wanting. And the second benefit for nesting it and creating one clip is that now we can smoothly add a change in scale or position to all four clips as one. So I'm going to do a keyframe at the beginning and then go to the end and add a 10-point increase in scale and then a little bit of a tilt up as well. So it looks pretty cool. And we have that nice steady zoom in that we created by scaling up and adding these keyframes. Now, if I didn't do this nesting step, then adding that zoom would be really difficult because I could go and then let's say put these at the highest speed, close the gap in between them, which would kind of be doing the same thing. But if I then wanted to go in and add some change in positioning or scale, once I go to the end of this clip, finish the scale, when we get to the next up, the scale would reset, which then I could go in to the beginning of this one and put the scale where the scale ended on a clip like this, but then I wouldn't have a smooth, gradual keyframing change between all the clips because the clips are different lengths and so on. There's tons of problems you would run into. But the bottom line is using the nested sequence in this way is another great alternative and technique for putting together a more intermediate level time lapse. So I'm going through here and I'm pulling some more selects. And there's a great moment here where I want to show a technique we can use. It's really a handy way to use a cross dissolve. So if I play these clips together back to back, I'm putting some lenses on the shelf. And then there's another take where I bring my hand back and then I kind of reposition the lens. So if we do want to use this second shot, here's the thing. You see a snap right there because the lighting is slightly different in these two different takes. The same angle, the framing hasn't changed, but you can see that snap. It's a little bit jarring and a little bit distracting. So this is the perfect opportunity to use a little cross dissolve. So let's highlight our clips here and we're going to go over to our effects panel and we're going to put in cross dissolve. And we're going to go and we're going to drag that cross dissolve right on the middle of these two clips. Now, the default of a cross dissolve for all editing softwares is going to be a pretty decent amount of time. So we don't really need it for quite that much. The longer you stretch the cross dissolve, the more it's going to blend these two shots together over a slower amount of time. You can see my hand there start to ghost out and disappear. So we don't want that. We're going to keep it nice and short, but let's go ahead and play this through. And you can see there's no more quick snap between the change of these two shots. This really dissolved the transition between these two and blended it together nicely. So when the shadow from my hand comes in, it's seamless. Perfect. So that's with it. And if I highlight it and delete it, this is without. Boom. And this is with. Perfect. So we have another opportunity over here as well for a similar type of shot where I set down this light and then in a separate shot, but with the same framing again, I go down and I turn on the light. So we have this same similar snap between the exposure of the two. Let's see what we can do with the cross dissolve. So I'm going to drag it again between these two clips. Going to shorten the length of this transition. Hit play. and it's a lot more gradual. So this is with it and this is without. Way better with. Now, as I move forward through this edit as well, we're pulling selects on all these parts, gathering all these great clips. And I got to a part in the footage where we have this really cool camera movement where I'm going from the handheld recorder and we pull back, go to the microphone. That's perfect. But I will say there are scenarios when you might want to reverse the direction or orientation of the clip. And so we haven't dropped in my voiceover yet. But let's say in my voiceover, I'm talking about the microphone and how the microphone is attached to the zoom. That's great. But this shot shows the zoom and then it shows the microphone, which isn't really that bad. But I want to show you a little trick that we can do in that kind of situation where I'm going to duplicate these clips. So we have our old version here, and I'm going to highlight both of these clips that normally play from the Zoom handheld recorder, and then we're going back, and then the microphone comes in focus. So we're going to highlight these clips. We're going to right click, and we're going to choose speed and duration. And here's the trick. In this setting and in this panel, we can actually reverse the speed of the clip. So we're not going to slow things down. We're not going to speed things up, but we're going to make the ending the beginning and the beginning the end. So I'm going to click that function, hit OK. And now what we have is this same great shot, but we're moving from the microphone being in focus and doing a push in to the handheld recorder. And let's see the second version of that. Where we go past the microphone again and do a really nice push and shot to the zoom. So that is just a really handy trick that you can use to better make your visuals queue up to what's going on in your audio. So I'm really excited to see you implement that little ninja trick into your future edits. And we are just about done pulling our selects here. And I wanted to just share a little bit of an insight when it comes to choosing where to begin your shot. Now, on this example, you can actually see here that we're physically starting our shot where it's out of focus, and what's in focus is technically behind the main focal point of what we're showing, which is this piece of equipment. You can clearly see the logo, you can clearly see the title and the name of the equipment, and we're actually starting the shot just before we're pulling it into focus. Now, on paper, this would make no sense, but visually, as you can see, it's actually a bit of a nice introduction into the shot. It adds a little bit more depth. This shot, there's no intro focus. There's nothing at the beginning of it that kind of introduces what the viewer's looking at. Now, if we come back to this shot, we have a nice little introduction. So you can do this in a few different ways with different shot types. You can do a rack focus, just like what we're seeing here. You can also do what's called a reveal shot, where something in the frame is covering and slowly moves out of the way of where the viewer is going to be looking. So let's see what that looks like. As you can see, we have some foreground and it smoothly moves out of the way as our camera moves to the main focus point of this image. So on paper, like I said, again, this is another scenario where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to start the shot here. From everything that we've learned up until this point, This would kind of be breaking the rule of finding the in point, finding the out point, not having any extra space or information that doesn't need to be there if it's not offering value. So technically, this is a little bit of a rule breaker, but as you can see, offers depth and a little bit more of a dynamic image. So let's keep looking at some of the examples here. So on this next shot, as we're setting up, we have the foreground camera in focus, and we do a rack focus, go to the rest of the setup that's in the room. So this is a perfect other example. I can actually, there's a bit of an extra wobble in here and right there is when we start. So let's actually scoot that over. Yep. A lot more depth versus if I just started the shot from here. Of course, everything in frame looks great, but adding that extra few bit of frames consciously is what's giving these shots that little extra oomph. Now, I think I queued up a few more examples here as well. So as I was pulling these selects, I decided to keep those few extra introductory frames of these clips where I'm actually moving what I'm showing to the audience into frame, or they're coming into focus just as the clip comes on. So as you can see, a little bit of movement there with my hand and the item that I'm holding coming into focus, adding a little bit of that depth versus just starting right here. We get a little extra moment. Not too much though, not too little, just a little bit. Same with here. I move the item into frame. Same with that. There's a little bit of a rack focus. And with this as well. That is just a little extra insight as you're building your skills, getting to these more intermediate level techniques and ideas. That's just something I want to add in there. Now we're almost done pulling all the selects, and I'm excited because this is where things are really going to start to get interesting.